I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents. Following the devastating floods, we'll talk to someone overseeing relief efforts in Pakistan.
Jesus and Mary are in one book you may not expect. An interfaith discussion looks at that.
Mary is the only woman who is mentioned by name in the Quran.
And why people who are not Catholic are sending their children to Catholic schools.
Just because I'm not Catholic doesn't mean I just can't learn about another person's religion.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Almost 5 million people have been forced from their homes, the result of massive flooding in Pakistan. It's been 3 weeks there since the start of what's really been a devastating time for many Pakistanis.
Hundreds of thousands of people have found refuge in tent camps, but many more are unaccounted for. And one member of Pakistan's parliament says a majority of residents are not getting the help they need.
Well, one organization that is providing relief and has been a presence there in Pakistan since 1954 is Catholic Relief Services. Earlier today, I had a chance to speak with its country representative in Pakistan, Jack Byrne. Mr. Byrne, thank you so much for joining us here today on Currents. We really appreciate your time.
You're welcome.
Well, first of all, sir, where are you right now in Pakistan and what are you seeing?
I am based in Islamabad, in the capital, where our main office is. CRS has field offices in 4 other locations throughout the country, in Swat, in Besham and Mansehra. They are up in the north of the country, in the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and we have an office down in the south in Quetta.
Now, Swat, I understand you said you have an office there. Swat is one of the places that it has been really hard hit by flooding, if I understand correctly.
Yes, it's true. Swat and Besham were particularly hard hit. It's a mountainous area, so the runoff of the flooding and the rains has receded much faster than it has in the south. So we're seeing a quicker return, I wouldn't say at any rate, in any way return to normalcy, but people are responding better in the north. In the south, the situation is still changeable every day. There is still flooding from the Indus River.
How are people there who are the survivors and who are the ones who are trying to pick up the pieces holding up?
Well, we have seen, especially in the south, in the province of Sindh, that the people most affected were the people who had very little to begin with. These were itinerant farmers and seasonal workers who went from place to place. Most of them do not own their own land. So a huge concern right now is people being away from their land with the fear that squatters will come and take it. In addition to them being left with nothing, they're very concerned about getting home. In the south, that's not possible yet because the water levels are still so high. But we are seeing people left literally with nothing, living under maybe a sheet or a blanket. The government of Pakistan has been erecting tents, temporary shelters for many of these people along the river, the Indus River.
What is Catholic Relief Services doing throughout the country and in other parts of the country as well to help and to try to make this situation at least a little more bearable for the people who have to go through it?
Right. Well, CRS, through its many partners and Caritas partners throughout the world and through other donors, have responded by delivering up to this point over 3,000 non-food item kits. These include water purification tablets, cooking sets, blankets, and other hygiene items for families or households that have been affected. We are also moving into the construction of transitional shelters for many, many of these people in both the north and the south. We expect, after the distribution of meeting immediate needs and distributing these non-food item kits, that we will move into a more prolonged response, and that is restoring people's livelihoods, getting them back to work and back on their land as soon as they're able.
Donations to Pakistan have been a bit sluggish. Haiti dominated the headlines for weeks and even months. The situation's been a little bit different, at least here in the United States, as far as news coverage goes of Pakistan, so the donations haven't been quite what they were to Haiti. Why do you think maybe that's the case?
the response from donors has been similar to the onset of the flood, that is very slow, and for people to really grasp the enormity of it. It took some time for it to become clear in the media. So as we're moving into the fourth week after the flooding, and we're seeing a gradual increase in donor funding, one of the reasons the response has been different than it has been in Haiti and Chile and other huge natural disasters is that, frankly speaking, the body count is a little bit lower here than it was in Haiti or than it was compared to the 2005 earthquake in Pakistan, where over 80,000 people lost their lives. Here, the figure is at about 1,600 people. And also, there is what the United Nations calls a perception deficit, meaning that people may not have the most favorable perception of Pakistan because of elements of corruption and the Taliban and insurgency and other things that make people maybe a little bit reluctant to donate, more reluctant than we saw in Haiti and in 2005. But I think that's changing as more people become aware of the scope of the disaster and the number of people affected, which is now at 20 million people.
It's just a staggering number there. And last of all, just before we have to wrap up here, very quickly, how can people donate and help out if they would like to?
Yes, good question. People can, first of all, go to the CRS website and click on Help Pakistan. You can make online donations or send checks. Even $5, $10 would help enormously the relief effort here. CRS spends 96 cents on every dollar directly to the people who need it.
All right. Well, Jack Byrne joining us from Islamabad, Pakistan with Catholic Relief Services. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, we posted some more information over on our blog about how you can follow what Catholic Relief Services is doing in Pakistan and how you can help as well. Just go to currentsny.net and click on Riding the Wave.
Stay tuned. There's much more current straight ahead. When we return, we'll have the day's headlines, including the battle over the proposed Islamic Center near Ground Zero. Well, it continues with both sides taking to the streets. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Coming up in just a bit, a Muslim family that believes in the value of education, but specifically Catholic education. We'll share their story.
They do, but first, let's turn to the day's headlines. Debate is heating up over the proposed Islamic Center and mosque near Ground Zero. Dueling rallies were held Sunday in Lower Manhattan. As CNN's Susan Candiotti reports, people on both sides of the issue gathered without showing much hope for compromise.
Passionate protesters. They argue that an Islamic center and mosque 2 blocks away from Ground Zero is what they call a slap in the face to those killed on 9/11.
This is Andy from Brooklyn. Forget about it.
Andrew Sullivan is urging blue-collar workers to sign a pledge refusing any job at the proposed religious site. Hard hats were handed out at the protest rally. This man who works for the fire department put one on.
If they built it uptown, I'd have no problem with it, believe it or not. I would have no problem, just not down here.
For others, the Muslims behind the project are nothing short of sinister.
I think the people that are backing it, the people that are funding it, are actually in cahoots with them, with the terrorists.
About a block away, supporters scoffed at suggestions that an Islamic center would be a cover for terrorists.
There are many Muslims who lost Muslim family members at Ground Zero. So when they come to visit Ground Zero as a memorial, they should be able to walk 2 blocks down and pray for their loved ones.
An Ohio Army reservist on his way to Afghanistan sees the controversy as a perfect platform to prove what troops are fighting for overseas.
They have certainly the right and the ability to do it wherever they would like. And that's what I like about the country is the ability for
people who disagree with one another to hash it out without guns.
On Sunday, the wife of the imam involved in the Islamic Center controversy said there are no changes planned, but that a move could be considered after consultations, as she put it, with all major stakeholders.
We have to be cognizant that we also have a constitutional right. We have the Muslim community around the nation that we have to be concerned about. And we have to worry about the extremists as well, because they are seizing this moment. And so we have to be very careful and deliberate in when we make any major decision.
The Islamic Center planners say they're working with a rabbi to pattern the building like a Jewish community center. But that's of little interest to protesters.
And that is CNN's Susan Candiotti. New York Archbishop Timothy Dolan also weighed in on the controversy late last week. He says he has no strong feelings about the project, but might support finding an alternative site. Meantime, Archbishop Dolan also said yesterday he was saddened by attacks primarily targeting Hispanics on Staten Island. Dolan made the remarks during Sunday Mass at St. Mary's of the Assumption Church in the Port Richmond neighborhood of Staten Island. Hispanics have accounted for most of the victims in the dozen or so physical attacks in the neighborhood since April. In response, Archbishop Dolan called for people to come together. He said, God wants us to gather together in the unity of his kingdom.
Well, the U.S. Bishops' Conference is urging Congress to pass the No Taxpayer Funding for Abortion Act. In a letter to lawmakers on Capitol Hill, Cardinal Daniel DiNardo said the bill would, quote, write into permanent law a policy on which there has been strong popular and congressional agreement for over 35 years. Now, taxpayer funding of abortion was a hot topic, you'll remember, during the health care reform talks earlier this year. The Hyde Amendment already states no federal dollars can be used to pay for elective abortions, but Cardinal DiNardo says a separate bill is needed because the Hyde Amendment is a rider to the Health and Human Services Appropriations Bill. It is not permanent law. Political prisoners released by Cuba under an agreement with the Catholic Church could find a new home in the United States. Spain, which has been taking in several of those Cuban dissidents, said Sunday the U.S. State Department has expressed a willingness to take in some of the prisoners. Reports say about half of the 52 men held by the Cuban government since 2003 have been freed since July. Some are refusing to go to Spain, though, preferring to stay in Cuba or head to the U.S. And finally, when Pope Benedict heads to the UK next month, he will take part in several outdoor events and outdoor masses. Well, the Vatican today released a long list of do's and don'ts for those gatherings. Church leaders encourage pilgrims to bring along plenty of sunscreen, folding chairs, banners, and even some picnic foods to events in Glasgow, in London, and also in Birmingham. As for the list of don'ts, the Vatican says candles, pets, steel cutlery, and musical instruments are not allowed. Also on the list of banned items, alcoholic beverages.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more currents coming up. Just ahead, a discussion of Islam at a local Catholic parish. Welcome back. Well, earlier we showed you the latest in the ongoing public debate over the proposed Islamic Center near Ground Zero. And while an end to those arguments does not appear to be within sight, elsewhere in the city, New Yorkers have been taking the opportunity to learn a little more about Islam.
And back in the spring, Immaculate Conception Parish in Astoria, Queens, hosted a discussion with Father Patrick Ryan. He's a professor at Fordham University, and he talked about some connections between Christianity and Islam that might surprise you.
I went as a young Jesuit to Nigeria in 1964, and one of the things I discovered when I got to Nigeria as an English teacher is that Islam was already a large factor in the society of people in Nigeria. And now of the nearly 150 million people in Nigeria, about half are Muslim and half are Christians. Sometimes the great tensions develop between them, but Christians and Muslims have generally got along very well, sometimes within the same family. So I felt I learned something from them that I'd like to communicate in other parts of the world as well.
Christianity and Islam are the two largest religions in the world. There are 2 billion Christians, 1 billion Muslims, almost half the world's population. Muslims are moving into Astoria. So there's really an opportunity here to learn about one another. And I think we have to take the first step into opening ourselves to understand another world religion. It helps to understand your own religion in contrast to another religion.
Islam and Christianity are two different religious traditions in the same family of traditions that in some sense derive from the faith of Abraham. In the Quran, there are many stories that are similar to stories in the Bible, especially about Jesus and Mary, but there are also great differences. The understanding of Jesus is not as God, not as the Son of God, but as a great messenger from God. Mary is the only woman who is mentioned by name in the Quran. There is no other woman any place in the biblical narrative or in stories that are more indigenous to the Arabs who is actually named. Only the name of Maryam appears 34 times in the Quran.
I was amazed that the speaker chose to, it's a very unbiased, to the point, and his knowledge of Islam is very vast, and I learned a lot from him.
Given our great reverence and love for the Virgin Mary, it was wonderful to hear that she is reverenced in Islam, something I had heard before, but not as clearly and as well explained.
And when people say, well, are the Muslims learning about us? And I can't answer that. I'm hoping they are, but I can't answer that. All that we can answer is, from our point of view, we're kind of like secure enough in our own faith that learning about another faith is not disturbing to us, you know.
Just as we in New York have to understand the distinctness of Judaism from Christianity, we also have to understand the distinctness of Islam from either Judaism or Christianity, and to understand in what way it's the same and in what way it's different. It's by opening our minds up to the varieties of faith in our neighborhoods that we can learn to live together with understanding and peace.
Stay tuned, there's much more current straight ahead.
When we return, why a Muslim family is sending their children to a Catholic school.
With all of the heated debates surrounding the proposed Islamic Center near Ground Zero, it just might be kind of easy to forget that there are efforts to build bridges and understanding also taking place all across the city, like the Queens Parish we just saw that sponsored a series on Islam.
Yes, and now we want to show you the story of a family that's found value in the Catholic Church, specifically in the education that it provides. Now, theirs is the kind of family you were not likely to see in Catholic schools a generation ago. They don't belong to the parish. In fact, they don't even belong to the faith.
But they are part of the estimated 23% of Catholic school students in the Brooklyn diocese who are not Catholic.
And our Natalia Ortiz had a chance to visit with them.
We go to the mosque every Friday. That's like our holy day. And we pray every day and at home. Just because I'm not Catholic doesn't mean I just can't learn about another person's religion.
And learning is what it's all about for young Ali Tantawi, a fourth grader at St. Sebastian's in Woodside. Ali's parents are Muslims, but they've decided to send all three of their children to Catholic school. They say the education is just better, and the school superintendent for the diocese isn't surprised.
I think what has happened over the past couple of years is that parents have heard about the quality Catholic education that is offered in our elementary schools.
Salaf Tantawi, Ali's father, learned that firsthand himself.
I grown up back home in Catholic school also. I came from a family of 11, and 5 of them we went to Catholic school.
The diocese says non-Catholic students like these have been common in parochial schools for about 2 decades. But while that's changed the school's makeup, it hasn't changed their mission.
There's still places of firm evangelization, faith formation, and really discipleship for the future. So the mission of Catholic education is still clear in all of our schools: message, community, and service. The parents know that when they enroll their children in our Catholic schools that they must take religion. They must participate in the life of the school and the life of the parish.
And the Tantawis believe that exposing their children to another faith will have unexpected benefits.
They will understand their own religious better, actually.
And this dad has the numbers to prove it.
They score in religious test as 100, always.
And they say they plan on sending their kids to Catholic high school as well.
If I have to advise, if I'm in position to advise everybody, if you will be able to put your child in Catholic school, do it. It's good for them.
Quite a strong endorsement there.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice to see that. I mean, people coming together coming together in understanding and with the willingness to learn about each other's religions and things like that. With all of the goings on here lately, it's kind of it's a break from this because you saw, as we showed you before, the dueling debates in Lower Manhattan yesterday. And so these are people who are not holding up signs and yelling and screaming at each other or anything like that. These are people who are saying, we're going to send our kids to Catholic school because we appreciate the quality education there and the religious formation also because, it helps them understand, as you heard the father say, their own faith better.
Yeah, apparently they're getting 100s on their test scores in religion, and so they're clearly being able to look at a religion and a faith that's different from their own, objectively learn about it, and being able to also enjoy the benefits of the Catholic education overall, which is really great, and apparently learning a lot of tolerance in the process.
Yeah, and it's nice to see that snow in the piece, too. That would be
yeah, you can tell that wasn't shot last week, huh? Okay, well, that is it for this edition of Currents. Coming up tomorrow, it is never too early to learn how to stay safe. Kids at one local parish learn fire safety.
Until then, though, remember, you don't need a TV to watch us here on Currents. You can always watch online over at currentsny.net.
Also, you can check us out on Facebook and Twitter as well. Until next time, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.